I always like to think that we're that diamond in the rough. When Lotus actually started, it was this little tiny shop inside the commercial center, which in the 90s people thought was like the worst neighborhood of all time. And then so to grow up this big, I hope that Vegas sees us that way too, you know?
This is Taste, all in on Las Vegas food, presented by Las Vegas. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard.
Penny Chutima is the next generation of Lotus of Siam, an iconic James Beard Award-winning restaurant serving up regional Northern Thai food in Vegas since 1999. The daughter of Chef Saipin, Penny is dedicated to preserving and expanding Lotus of Siam's legacy, beloved by chefs like Anthony Bourdain and just about everyone else in Vegas. Also on the show, Matt talks with Amanda Signorelli about running the Golden Steer, an iconic Vegas steakhouse founded in 1958, frequented by Elvis and Sinatra, that's been in her family for years. Penny Chutima, this is Taste. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I guess to start, I'm so curious, what was it like growing up at Lotus of Siam?
It was hectic, I guess you can say. You know, when my parents took over in like 99, it was a fast pace for them. You know, first generation immigrant here. My mom didn't really speak any English. My dad was probably her backbone. The only thing she really knew was to cook, you know, and at the same time, had basically a young family. When we moved here, I was like 11. My sister was barely 3. It was difficult for sure. I didn't really have much of a childhood because, you know, my parents basically was at work all day, but made the most out of it.
I'm sure you're eating a lot of good food. Were you kind of hanging out in the restaurant, doing your homework, helping out? What was the kind of experience for you?
All the time. I mean, after school was done, which is funny because in California, when we used to live there, I would actually walk from school to home. But over here, it was like so much more distant. So I ended up having to walk from school to the restaurant. And that was like gnarly in Vegas heat. That was actually I was like, oh crap. But you know, my day-to-days over there was doing my homework, helping my mom. I even did like dishes, whatnot, or like peel basil, you know, same stuff.
Mm-hmm. And how has the restaurant changed over the years? It's become like a jewel in the Las Vegas dining scene, and also you have multiple locations.
Yes. I mean, from where it started to right now has dramatically probably expanded. I think, you know, in such a short time frame. Like for me, I feel like 25 years is still kind of short, but within that time frame, we definitely expanded. We've grown. Like, you know, I basically learned from a lot of like my parents' mistakes too in the expansion. So it was very eye-opening to see what they have done in the first 15 years to now.
Are there any like specific learnings or takeaways that you find yourself thinking about a lot?
Most of the time, yeah. I mean, it's basically based on employees. Like honestly, I could just think back on COVID because that was probably my biggest stress factor. It wasn't like, okay, hey, the closure. It was like, I have 110, 115 staff on my belt. Like, if I can't do something for them, like, what's going to happen to them? Because, you know, they depended on this job. They depended on me. And on top of it, they had families that they had to take care of. So that was probably my most stressful factor.
Definitely. I think even sitting in this dining room, thinking about the amount of people that must be working in the kitchen and in the front of house to be feeding everyone and making it possible, it is truly like such a large amount of people. I guess to take a step back, when did you decide to get involved in your family's restaurant business?
You know, I was back and forth in the beginning. I want to say like between 2011, actually 2009, I got fully heavily involved because my dad had appendicitis and nearly cost him his life. So that's when I came in. And then after that, took a little bit of a hiatus from the actual work after he kind of fully recovered. I want to say 2011, I was going to go pursue my law degree and go to school. So I ended up moving back to California. Then the big rain happened at Sahara in 2017, and that's when I became fully involved since then.
What do you mean by the big rain?
So in 2017, we had such a terrible landlord, clearly. And What had happened was they removed all of our parts in the roof, and basically this rain happened, and we ended up shuttering our doors on a Friday night during the worst rush hour ever. I've had customers were like, they can clearly see this rain is coming in, and next thing you know, they're like, "Why are you closing?" I'm like, I cannot operate. Like I can't leave the restaurant open because, there's rain coming in. You don't know what type of water that's coming in from the roof or the ceilings or anything like that. I'm like, I have to shut down. And so
Yeah. I mean, rain in the desert on its own seems like a unusual event, much less through holes coming in the roof.
yeah.
So what kind of work are you doing with your family's restaurant business today?
So now I just do a lot of operations. I do from human resources to ops to the legalities to hiring to firing. I mean, it's literally everything all in one. And, at the same time, we're also building our team to make sure that we can handle each expansion.
Definitely. So from your perspective, what does Lotus of Siam represent in the Las Vegas dining scene?
I always like to think that we're that diamond in the rough, especially how before when Lotus actually started, it was this little tiny shop inside the commercial center, which in the 90s people thought was like the worst neighborhood of all time. I've had guests even tell me they're like, we thought we were in the wrong place because there's no way that a restaurant can be known like this and be in this neighborhood. And so I like to think like, we are that little diamond. And then so to grow up this big that, I hope the Vegas sees us that way too,
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, when I told people I was coming to Vegas, all of my chef and food friends were like, you're going to Lotus of Siam, right? That was the first one. And it's, from a mixture of just being dedicated to the food for so long and having all these press and accolades and James Beard Awards coming in as well. I guess I'm curious if you see the diners' relationship with Northern Thai food evolving over the past 20 or so years as like there's been more Thai restaurants.
100%. Like when we first started, oh my God. I mean, I may have been like 11 or 12 at the time, but when we started, I can see how my parents really fought that stereotype. My mom is definitely not a confrontational person at all, and neither is my dad, but they were very firm believers of like, hey, there's way more things besides pad thai or fried rice. Or I've even heard people like, oh my God, you guys don't have chow mein. It's not authentic Thai. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's literally saying this to me, And so I seen my dad was the one who took the biggest risk for sure. Because, my mom thought that he was charging people, but he was really just giving out the freebies in the beginning. So he'll give out like nam khao tods, khao soy, a lot of the northern style dishes that people weren't even like aware. They just thought Thailand was only sweet foods, spicy foods, and pad thai. Whereas like when my parents did in the 90s, it's a change of dynamic. People then realize like, oh my God, there's way more than to just Thai food than just those. Mm-hmm. And so even seeing now, like everywhere now knows what khao soy is, but I've gone to like a few Thai restaurants that are like, I know for sure this isn't khao soy because they would use the hype on the food, but they won't follow through on what the real recipe is. And so people will like mix yellow curry with each other and then add a little bit of sugar just to be like, oh, this is khao soy, but it's not. Like khao soy does not have turmeric in it, and just one of those things.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea of now we're at this point where maybe like the average American diner is more familiar with a dish like khao soy and it can be marketed in that way, but that people necessarily like aren't following through on what the dish truly represents.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve too, to be honest. It's like, oh, I've had khao soy before, but I've never had this. And I'm like, look, my mom's from the north. I've seen her make this. I've seen like the neighboring person make this. I'm like, I definitely know what khao soy is, And so I think it bugs me because the culture is there. But if you yourself are part of that culture and you're not being responsible to show people the real realities of what it is and you're just lying about it, like I hate liars at the end of the day, And so I want to showcase my mom's culture. I want to show it to what it really is, like the beauty of it. Not just like fake it out so that people can just make an easy buck.
So when people are coming into the restaurant today, what are the dishes that you find people are ordering the most?
So here, so far, I've for sure when we run our P-Mix, the garlic prawns is like a number one seller. Cow soy is the number one. We also have our crispy duck. And, back then, I actually like, not gonna lie, I do feel proud like how my parents did this restaurant because now when you go to Thai restaurants, people have options. Back then, chili basil was only stuck to chicken. They didn't really give you an option to pick, oh, what kind of meat would you like? What kind of protein choice would you like? And even back then, you went to a Thai restaurant. If you had a peanut allergy, you weren't gonna go because you really thought you were gonna die. And so because a lot of Thai foods, people use peanut oil. But for us, it's not. And, we try to cater to the dynamic of our guests rather than having our guests change their lifestyle for us, which, you don't do that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of guests, I feel like you must have a lot of iconic guests that are coming into the restaurant because Lotus of Siam is such a destination. Do you have any celebs coming into the restaurant, like getting down with some cow soy or something?
Yeah, actually, every time they come, I always make sure there's a cow soy on their plate.
Cow soy is like my last meal on earth, by the way. It truly is my favorite food, so I'm really excited.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things that I just want people to try the food that my mom's from. It's like she is a very hardworking lady. I've seen every aspect of her, and so for her to come from Thailand, come here, not know English, but yet do what she did and how she's doing it, I'm like, why am I going to let it go away?
Mm-hmm. So what are the celeb regulars at Lotus of Siam?
Sometimes Drew Barrymore whenever she's in town. Jim Belushi.
Oh, yeah?
Always come in. Yeah. And should we get like Benny, I think his name is Selena Gomez.
Oh, Benny Blanco.
Yeah, so he's
eating everywhere, I feel like.
Yeah,
he's a food person.
He loves food. And so he'll come here like before his show, and then after that he'll get like a little table together and filled with food. We get a lot. I used to remember seeing a lot of even Mick Jagger came in the other week.
What did you feed Mick Jagger? I have to know.
So we gave him a whole snapper.
Nice.
He wanted fish and he wanted northern, so we gave him cow soy. We did a protein choice because he was like, I want something with soft shell crab. I'm like, I got you. I was like, this dish is probably the perfect way to eat it with soft shell crab. And so he cleared that. We also got the num prik ong, which is, I like to explain to people, it's kind of like the meat sauce, but it's really not. It's like more thicker, more, tomato. You have a lot of herbs in there. And then you eat it with what we have, like the crudités, it's mixed vegetables and everything. Cleared that. He even had papaya salad. So it was like, he really likes to be adventurous in his eating for sure.
For the restaurant or the people that work here, is it special when a celebrity comes in, or is that just par for the course at this point?
It varies. It really varies. Unless it's like someone's like, oh my God, I see like BTS. They'll be like, oh my God, please.
Oh my God. Okay. Did BTS come here?
It's so funny. So when they weren't fully like really well known yet, my friend ended up booking their table at the original spot on Sahara. And so my sister was the only one that knew that was BTS. I didn't even know who they were at the time. And I was like, because I didn't really follow boy bands. And so my sister was like, oh my God, that's BTS. I was like, who is that? And then she was like, you don't know? I was like, no. But then when they had their last concert, the managers all came in to eat. And so I was like, okay.
That's cool. I feel like it must feel good as a restaurant that when BTS comes in years ago, that their managers come back now because they must have been talking about how good that meal was still.
Yeah.
We were just at the Sphere last night and I was thinking that, we were all manifesting like who should play the Sphere. And I was thinking BTS should play the Sphere, but it might be like too much emotionally to handle for the fans because they're already so over the top and you add in the screens. It's just like crazy.
I think it would be an amazing visuals for sure because like I did go to their concert. I think it was like 2 years ago.
Here in Vegas?
Yeah, in Vegas. And I thought they were such amazing entertainers. Like they are really good at what they do.
In terms of like thinking about just the array of programming you're doing here in the restaurant as well, I know that Lotus of Siam has a really notable kind of wine pairing program as well. How does your sommelier approach some like classic pairings of wine with Northern Thai dishes?
It originally started with my dad.
Yeah?
It's just funny too because he does not drink. The man does not drink, but he knows his wines. So a lot of the list in the beginning was all based on him. And then he's taught me. He's taught my sister, and he's also taught some of the staff that used to be with us and who are still with us. And it's just one of those things that it's based on preference too. But we also factor in that, hey, if the food is really spicy, you might want a little bit more residual sugar in your wine, and it helps offset. And it seems to be like German wines definitely pair a lot better with Thai food than a lot of other wines.
Yeah. Have you been to Ugly Baby in Brooklyn, the Thai restaurant?
Mm-mm.
It's a really great Thai restaurant. They're really assertive and like creative with their flavors and their dishes. And they have a really extensive natural wine program. And I feel like when I grew up eating Thai food, it would be like Singha, like a great like light beer or something. But then I was at Ugly Baby and I was drinking like a pet nat or something like that had the bubbles and a little bit of the sugar. And it really helped me get through the whole meal in a really fun way.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. Next time you're in New York, you'll have to go there.
For sure. I mean, I definitely have a few lists already that people have sent me. So I'm like, all right, I got to check this one out too.
Yeah. When you travel, do you find yourself going to other Thai restaurants to check it out?
It depends where I'm at. Like if I'm going to, like I just really came from Japan, I had no thought to really try a Thai restaurant, but I still had to. One of my friends was like, just try it. I'm like, fine.
Where did you go?
King of Taste. It was in Ginza.
How was it?
It was actually pretty good. So no lie, it was actually pretty good. But there was like one dish that I was like, all right, I'm never gonna order this again. But everything else, I was like, all right, this is actually pretty spot.
Well, you're being good at your job if on a short trip to Japan you're still going to eat Thai food.
I think I ate like 9 times that day.
Wow, I love that. I'm curious, what are your goals for the future of the family business?
It's really to expand the restaurant for, I don't want to say for my mom, but it's like for her. Because at the end of the day, she would have never done what I'm doing because she's so modest about it. Like she didn't want to take too much of the burden. But I'm like, Mom, you have like 110 people that depend on you, and for me, I have to think of, they're not always going to be cooks and servers their entire lives, but for them to stay loyal to you, like I have to figure out what I can do to take care of them after. You know what I'm saying? It's like my goal now isn't just to be like a boss. That was never my intent. My intent was to make sure I lead and then be able to help people grow. And then on top of it, if they continue to stay and grow with the company, it's like my job is to take care of them too.
Mm-hmm. And when you say expand, do you mean expand in Vegas or outside of Vegas as well?
Outside. We're just planning to do in a major city for sure, like within the U.S. and outside of the U.S.
Any chance you'll come east to New York?
We're actually already looking at it.
Oh my God. I love to hear that.
We used to be there.
You were there?
Yeah, in 2009. But the partnership ended up sour, so it wasn't too bad.
So this time you want to expand. Do you think you're going to have partners or keep it all in?
It's all in-house.
All in the family?
Yeah. I mean, I have a very good role model too, especially like watching how the Panda family has done.
Mm-hmm.
It's all internal. So if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, I love to hear that. I guess to close, I want to hear a little bit about your favorite places to eat in Vegas when you're not working, maybe on and off the strip.
Oh, man. So I love, for the past, I don't know, year, I've been eating at Ito at Fontainebleau. Also, the neighborhood sushi spot is Sushi Hero, which is in Henderson. Those two are my major ones to go to.
We might go to Ito later. What do you think we should order there?
Oh, so if you guys are going to the full Ito, the omakase style, they're gonna pick it out for you.
Yeah, they're gonna pick. No, the one at Fontainebleau.
Yeah, if they're just gonna pick it for you.
Yeah,
just let them do all that because there's no menu.
Okay, so I don't even have to choose.
But just tell them that at the end, just be like, okay, Penny said that this was supposed to be good. So then they'll be on their toes just a little bit,
Yeah, keep them on their toes. Yeah. And then when you're eating here in the restaurant, what are you ordering?
So I have a few. I order the khao soi. I will order my mom's namgyo, which is like a pork stew with the vermicelli noodles. That one's like my ultimate favorite. That's my comfort food. Mm-hmm. I'll die with that. And, I always do like the penny ceviche too because that dish has like a little special place in my heart just because the original dish is so good, but people can't look past the whole raw prawns. So I had to do it a different way. And ever since then, it's been like taken off.
So what's the swap that you made?
So originally was gung chanampa, which is Thai marinated prawns. And it's basically a whole raw prawn. And you marinate it. And then after that, you serve it with like garlic, mint, and a little bit of chili paste with we call it seafood sauce, right? But because people can't get past like looking at a raw shrimp, they're like, oh, I don't. But I'm like, the flavor's there. And so what we did is I did into a penne ceviche. I was like, we diced up the prawns, we marinated, same technique, everything, but we add more of garnishment, which is like a kaffir lime. We add garlic and everything else already mixed in. And then we kind of like modernize it because sometimes people just want more than just a bite. We'll put like the fried wonton chip on the side and it's literally boom.
So it's still the raw prawn. It's just cut up smaller with a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, and I think it ended up appealing more to the masses just because, like I said, the dish is very well known in Thailand and people eat it often. But I think in being in America, it's very different. You know, they see something, they're like, oh my God, it's raw. And they assume it's going to get sick.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like we marinate it a certain way and then we like the way the Thai mentality thinks is like acid kills the bacteria.
Yeah. And that's like not just a mentality, but a scientific fact as well.
Exactly. And so once we do that and it's all into a different output or outlook, everybody will they ended up liking it more. And I'm like, you're literally eating the same thing that you guys said. It's like, no.
But it's a smart swap, and that's why it's called the penne ceviche.
Yeah. And that's just because, like, you know, I feel like as our restaurant, we have to take the initiative to educate our guests too. It's not just like, oh, okay, hey, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess to close, I'm curious, if you could manifest one thing for the future of Thai food here in America, what would you want?
Just stick true. You know, like our food is good already. We don't need to add too much sugar. We don't need to cater to the ideology of like fake Thai food. You know what I'm saying? Like if one restaurant in Thailand can sell just one dish and it's pad Thai and they can do it great, other Thai restaurants don't have to mimic and copy whatever that person's doing. Do something else that's also great. You know, there's so many good dishes in Thai food that, you know, that needs to be more well known in the US, but don't copycat everybody else to do it, you know?
Just stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
Penny, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and coming on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Amanda Signorelli, welcome to This Is Taste. It's so great to be here in your restaurant, the Golden Steer. We're in a private dining room here. Is this off strip, you call it?
I would call it off strip. From a community standpoint, we certainly consider it, but obviously we're literally sandwiched right in between Resorts World and Stratosphere across from the brand new Fontainebleau. So we're very, very close.
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of time at Fontainebleau this week, and we have a whole week of coverage covering strip, off strip. We're covering the food of Las Vegas, the pageantry, and really wanted to talk to you. You have a really cool backstory. Your family has run this business for many years, but you joined in 2019. Tell me a little bit about the history of Golden Steer. This is really one of Las Vegas's remaining iconic restaurants. So for our listeners, let's get a sense of where we are sitting right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the oldest restaurant on the Las Vegas Strip. We're one of the oldest steakhouses in town, and that was because we started in 1958, which was an amazing time to open a restaurant. We actually began technically as what's called a Western Frontier restaurant, which is a technical term for back then. So we would actually allow all these cowboys come into Nevada, whatever they caught, they would bring in. We'd be responsible for cleaning, butchering, serving, and cooking for them. So if you look at the early iterations of our menu, I kid you not, you'll see things like rattlesnake, you'll see all of this game on there, you'll see some turtle on there, very much like Cowboy Wild West alternatives in that time. And then after that, we had a bunch of core periods of history in between the mob, the Rat Pack, the celebrities that came shortly thereafter.
Yeah, let's get into that because I think the history of Vegas aligns with the history of your restaurant. And you've got, you know, numerous celebrities who dined here. Why did Dean Martin, Elvis Presley, Why did they all, what Martin Scorsese, I'm sure, scouted out casino to possibly shoot here when he was doing that. Well, let me ask you, why did they come here?
Yeah, great question. So it all actually began with one person, which was Sammy Davis Jr. So back during the day, unfortunately, Las Vegas was an incredibly prejudiced city. And so we allowed Sammy Davis Jr. as a city to perform on our stages, but we didn't host him anywhere else. He wasn't allowed to dine. He wasn't allowed to be in these public places, and he had to stay way off strip at the Moulin Rouge. So as he was performing and going back and returning home, there was one restaurant that didn't believe in those old school beliefs, which was the Golden Steer. So we invited Sammy Davis Jr. in and said, Sammy, you will always have a booth, a spot in the public main dining room of this restaurant that we will hold for you, because we want you to know that we believe you're a core element of the community and we respect you. So he came, he started dining here. That's what actually started us doing the namesake patron booths, which you can still see named there. Shortly thereafter, Frank Sinatra and support started coming, as did the rest of the Rat Pack, as did the rest of their friends, who ended up including people like Marilyn Monroe. And we still actually have stories of patrons who come in and say, I remember when my grandfather was here, and I kid you not, Frank Sinatra jumped up on a table with whiskey in a hand, cigar in another, and was serenading everyone in the room. And that's what really started it. Now, of course, when you have the glitz and the glam, shortly thereafter, what's always going to follow is the seedy side. So in that case, in the mob days, that was truly looking at the big mob owners of all of the casinos. Now, what's interesting about the Golden Steer is during that time, we were considered neutral territory was the phrase, because we were one of the few places on the strip or near the strip that wasn't directly owned by a mob family.
You were also the place allowing a black guy to dine in your dining room, which to me is absolutely revolutionary. I'm sure you got a lot of pushback, the history of this restaurant, for having that. But it allowed you to maintain a neutrality, I'm sure.
Yeah, it allowed us to maintain neutrality, also allowed us to stick to our values. We're a very progressive restaurant. We always believe that everyone's welcome. That's a big part of our brand. It's also what obviously meant that the mob felt so supported, being able to come in here and know their privacy would be respected.
Okay.
And so Tony Spilotro had his own booth that was in the corner, and he never had to worry about the feds coming in. He had a backdoor entrance, the whole 9 yards, and it was a big community then. How do we recognize every single part of the community? This is old school Vegas, right? There was feelings that were very different than how we think about it today.
Yeah, unbelievable history. Now, let me ask you, when you talk about the seedier side of this restaurant, not the proprietors, but the fellows hanging out here, what happened in these walls? Are there any crimes committed in here? Anything worth mentioning?
Yeah, so there were some crazy little quirks about this restaurant because we did have so many mob families here, and it kind of came in a couple different layers. So obviously you had Tony, who was consistently coming here. He was from the Hole in the Wall game in Chicago, was the lead enforcer. He was obviously featured in the movie Casino. This was his favorite restaurant because it was right next door to his business. Now, he called it a jewelry shop. I'd call it a pawn shop, because the way it would work is he'd go and actually steal all of the goods, all of the jewelry from all these celebrities in Las Vegas, and then he'd sell it at his quote-unquote jewelry shop. Now, good news, you can buy it back. Bad news, you lost it in the first place. And so that's how it worked. And he would come here and then meet with his attorney, Oscar Goodman. So Oscar Goodman, who had a cameo in Casino, he was constantly here with all of his clients. He also has a booth. So they were spending a ton of time, which meant that they also, because of that, influence brought all the other families. And so our maitre d' at the time, there's a folklore that says the way it worked is they would get I kid you not, a newspaper with a casino chip, so they knew which family was coming, where to sit people to make sure there wasn't going to be an incident. And that's kind of the stories you hear about. Now, fast forward, if you love podcasts, obviously you're listening to this as well, there was a podcast that was done called Mobbed Up, where they had Frankie Collada, who was the enforcer's right-hand man of Tony Spilotro, who was always coming here to do all of his meetings with Tony's. And so if the walls can talk, that would be it.
Was there a moment in Las Vegas when it all changed? I feel like we could pinpoint a time when it became less about the Rat Pack and the mob and becoming more of a globalized city. We're talking to a lot of chefs, celebrity chefs and chefs who are less known, but everyone can agree that this is a really important dining city in the world, and it clearly, you know, the history of the town. You grew up here. Is there like a moment you would imagine that that shifted everything?
Yeah, there were a series of small moments that had large cascading impacts that changed the history and the future of the city. So one very, very important, started all of this moment was back in the day, casinos, because it was considered at this time sin, could not get capital unless it was going to individual people. A corporation could not hold a gambling license. That changed, and it was changed specifically to get the mob out of the business. When that happened, it started professionalizing the casino industry. It started professionalizing gaming. All of a sudden, you saw this influx of banks, this influx of true capital coming in rather than just powerful individuals that had accumulated large sources of wealth. And when that happened, the actual properties then had to rethink how they were making money, what was top of line. They're trying to be, frankly, an adult, legal, grown-up industry. And that meant they had to change things. And so that was kind of the first wave that made a lot of changes. Then you had the second wave, which was when Vegas shifted away from, I just want to gamble, to I want to entertain. That was a huge change in our identity, where we no longer were as focused as one individual slot machine, but rather, how do we look at both the clubs that are coming in here, the great dining experiences that are coming in here? How do we create new experiences? How do we bring in entertainers that are world-class?
How do we get Diplo to
How
stay?
do we get Diplo?
Yeah.
And moments with Steve Wynn, who definitely led the charge on that.
Yeah, Steve Wynn is a name that has come up quite a bit and has certainly invested a lot as a private individual, but as a corporation. Are there any other, from your vantage, like operators, casinos, hotel groups that have really been pioneers? I'd love to get your take. I'm really curious.
Yeah, so obviously Kirk Kerkorian was a huge character here in Las Vegas. Everyone loves and respects him because he did so much for this town in constantly building and opening other casinos. He brought in a lot of that professional concept, which was really critical to how we think about that business, which led to a lot of the changes you see today. So he absolutely gets the credit. MGM also gets the credit for really starting to be one of the first hotels that saw that pivot on, I can make a ton of money, not just on a slot machine, and really help bring in big sources of talent, sponsoring that, thinking about new concepts and bringing in chefs. So I think all of those people absolutely deserve credit for some of these changes.
You said a great word there. You said chefs. And this is what I was trying to get to. And I think our listener, we've gotten a great history and we're building towards this moment where Las Vegas becomes a place where chefs are recruited and chefs and operate. And I'd love to get a sense, Amanda, the chefs in the 90s, give us a sense of what it was like when, Wolfgang Puck is opening in like 91, 91, 92. And like, he's one of the first, but then it really opens the floodgates to be making Vegas become this really a global culinary destination. What are some of these other early chefs that pioneered Las Vegas dining?
The big one that we always come back to is Wolfgang Puck, right? Because he was the first one that was able to show this is what the path could be. This is how we develop, and this is how we expand, not only into one restaurant. Because in the beginning, if you talk to that team, a lot of people said, you're going to Vegas? Mm-hmm. How's that going to go? You're not in a major culinary city. It's going to be second to everybody. And then all of a sudden it was first. And then not only was it a first priority, but, you launched another concept? Oh my God, maybe there's something
Double down.
here.
Double down.
Right? And then you have, obviously, in today's day, another one of like Jose Andres and everything that he's done has been huge to see that you can have multiple concepts in there, because we've definitely have waves too of some of the Food Network stars who have come in. Maybe they have one concept, but then what does it look like to have multiple? What does it look like to have Chef Etri come in with multiple concepts, partnering with these casinos? Now we've got more groups like Lotus that are coming in. So all of these kind of changes are happening pretty fast.
Wow. Lots to ask you about that, because you've mentioned some of the names. We have Wolfgang on this week. We have Mark Vetri, Michael Mina have all appeared. It all comes down to the cooking, I feel, to start. We obviously will get into the pageantry and like the song and dance that goes with dining in Las Vegas, but let's talk about sourcing ingredients. I feel like that's something that we should talk about at your restaurant, but also restaurants who operate here. How do you source in the middle of the desert and make it feel like it's actual farm to table? It feels like it's as good of a restaurant in New York and Los Angeles.
It's a great question, because you're not granted with this lovely farm next door, right? We don't have the luxury of that, which makes things really hard. And you have to be a lot more thoughtful about even the small things, right? So very tactically here at the Golden Steer, we do all of our marinara and our ranch homemade in-house, right? A lot of other restaurants will do something that's going to come from a farm and is going to be crafted. We don't have the luxury of doing that. You have to make it from scratch. So that from scratch feeling, because we don't have those places nearby, is a lot more a part of our blood as a culinary city than you might see in somewhere else, because you're not necessarily going to get the same collection of eclectic ingredients that you could otherwise. The other piece is it requires a lot more thoughtfulness on where you're sourcing from outside of the state, and also what that means in terms of freshness, right? So if you're especially going to be a seafood restaurant here, you're going to be ordering things
Monterey
same
Bay.
day, next day, right? It's going.
Yep.
And there's a lot of restrictions with it.
Let's get to the beef. We got to talk about your restaurant. What are we eating here? When we come here and visit, how do you, after taking over in 2019, modernize the restaurant? Or maybe you don't. I'm not sure. How do you make it feel like a restaurant that's viable and vibrant when you've got Mark Vetri and Jose Andres, and you've got Lotus of Siam operating. It's a very competitive city. How do you stay fresh?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first one is calling out that this is a very competitive market, but it's also one of the most connected markets. Because Las Vegas is truly defined from an economic standpoint by hospitality, the friendliness we have and wanting to support each other is felt a lot more deeper here than I would argue you would see in pretty much any market. So we're a lot more connected to each other. We're all cheering each other on, and we're all trying to help each other out, and we're constantly supporting each other's restaurants. I can't tell you how many times I'm at Mark Vetri's restaurant, and he's here just the other week, right? We're
he
always
mentioned
there.
it to us, actually.
Yeah, we love each other, and that's special. So I think that's really, really important. When it comes to things like beef and what you're going to expect from coming into the Golden Steer and what that experience is, the first thing is we don't believe necessarily in modernizing the brand in front. We like to say it's old school in front, new school in the back, which means when you walk in here, I want you to feel like you've been transported in time. I want you to feel like you're living another classic period that is truly timeless, that you can touch, feel, smell, and have that experience. All of those things are incredibly important to us. There's also little tactical changes that it means in terms of the food. So when it comes to the beef itself, you're looking at USDA prime, top 6%, all wet age, at minimum 30 days, and we're actually getting in the primals, and we hold true to that Western Frontier style.
You're breaking down the big boys, the big carcasses. Yeah.
We're doing big primals that we're breaking down in the kitchen. Most people are frankly shocked at how small our kitchen is. So you can get a little brief look in there. It is very tiny.
I love to see the meat locker. I'm sure that thing is getting filled up like a couple times a week, I'd imagine.
It's wild. There's some things that we can't do the old ways thanks to things like health department. Small examples, when we do our Caesar salad dressing, we do it in a plastic bowl. Sure, you should be doing it in a wooden bowl. That's not allowed in Nevada. Things like that end up changing how you do it, but is super core to who we are, of making sure you can still preserve things like tableside service, which is old school.
So your father operated the restaurant for over 20 years, and you took over in 2019. So what drew you to the business? You were working, you ran a large tech conference, and you were in that world. You were a managing consultant. You came from a very different background, but what drew you to take over the business? Are you just like a huge food fan, and did you see the opportunity? I mean, all of the above. Let me get a sense of your journey here.
Yeah, I think growing up in Vegas, you cannot be from this town and not have an immense respect, appreciation, and humility for how hard it is to be in food. You just love it. It's a part of your DNA because this is what we all wake up and do together. And that's really important. So it's hard not to fall in love with it when you're from a city like this, especially when you're going to see every major world-class restaurateur or chef coming out here at some point and starting a concept, which is frankly nothing short of inspiring and innovating every day. And so that's definitely something that's always been core to my blood. For me personally, I've always been really excited about brands. And the Golden Steer in particular is a phenomenal brand that's also predominantly organic. My big test of a brand, which I love telling people, we've had 2 people, I kid you not, in the past 5 years, who have walked in and said, hey, check out my tattoo. Didn't know who they were, didn't know anything about them, and they had a tattoo of the Golden Steer, either on their arm or on somewhere else on their body. And that's really impressive that it holds that community respect.
Amazing. What was it like when you took over? I mean, was it like a big learning curve to learn how a P&L works at a restaurant versus a tech conference? Were you ready for it? What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I have to admit, prior to coming into this restaurant, I did not know how to cook. I was a terrible cook. My husband will tell you that all day, all long. And he, fortunately, is also a tech entrepreneur, but he went to culinary school. So he's got that background in the kitchen. And so between the two of us, we were able to jump in and then figure it out. I can do the numbers. I can play on the P&L side. He's on the operations. He understands that through and through. And then also the kitchen piece. And so it was extremely difficult. It was a really, really tough learning curve, yes, which then was quickly then made even more difficult by the fact that we got our feet underneath us in a year. 1 year later, on our literally 1 year mark of being at the Golden Steer, is also when COVID hit.
Yeah. You guys bounced back pretty quickly, though, in Vegas, it sounds like.
Vegas was very fortunate as a market to be pretty pro-tourist even during that period, and being creative on how we did it. So here's what that tactically meant for us. We had, the day that we reopened our doors, we had gentlemen coming in from the commission measuring out every single table, making sure it was appropriately spaced. For us, we wanted to make sure that there was still warmth and that there wasn't the kind of like yellow caution tape. So we actually went and partnered with a Las Vegas business that's locally run by a woman here to get, I kid you not, mannequins of all of the patrons who stayed here and filled them in and decorated them in. So you had Marilyn Monroe dining next to you.
I love that.
To keep that alive.
I saw that a lot. That was a very smart move. Let's talk about TikTok, because TikTok has been a platform that's helped a lot of restaurant groups and chefs over the years, but it seems like in particular the Golden Steer has a real following. Why?
Yeah, TikTok has definitely made the golden steer the past few years, for sure. It has been our best tool to get out the brand, make sure everybody's aware of it. Today, we're one of the most viral restaurants in America, sitting at over 150 million impressions of hashtag golden steer.
Wow.
And it really started by taking a pretty big risk. When COVID came, a lot of people pulled back their marketing spend and said, I'm going to wait. We did the opposite. We doubled down on spend in two areas. We doubled down on spend on marketing, where we were trying to get out the brand, get out the communication. And then we also started doing that in how we were working with our employees so that we had a really strong program. And that was important to us to make sure that we could stay engaged with our community and get creative on how we were using our labor. We then had this incident where we said, hey, let's try TikTok. We'll just see what happens. At the time, everyone said, you're crazy. It's an old school brand. TikTok's there for a bunch of Gen Z 12-year-olds. What are you talking about?
Dancing to, songs.
Yeah, songs, which we didn't really have the kind of go-to native song to meme dance to. Instead, we decided to jump on there. The first few months, we didn't see a ton of lift, but then we ended up having this moment where all of a sudden we had all these individuals coming in from around the country saying, hey, I'm here to have the TikTok lobsters. We're like, what are you talking about? And it just blew up.
It's the one with all the butter, right?
It's one with all the dunking and all the butters.
Yeah, we were screening that earlier, looking at all the TikToks, and also like a nice like cross section of a primal of like a strip looks pretty good on TikTok too. Food in particular hits on TikTok. We all know that, and you've done a cool job. Must be exciting. Like, how do you grapple with the fact that TikTok might go away? Changing tastes and social platforms. How do you stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, we're constantly living in it 24/7. I think the biggest learning for us is to be creator-led. So we have a lot of really rich relationships with creators who are asking all the time, where are you going, right? So even when we look at TikTok potentially going away, you're hearing from creators that they're moving over to YouTube Shorts. It's a very similar platform in terms of the structure and the style of content. It works well. How do you have those conversations? You have to have it with the creators themselves and lead with them rather than trying to guess on the back end.
Yeah. So in terms of booking here, what's it like? What's your reservation book looking like right now? I've heard it's a tough table. You've blessed us with a table for later tonight. Looking forward to having a meal. But let me ask you, like, what's it looking like right now?
Right now, we're looking close to about 4 months out, which is phenomenal. We are so grateful and so lucky, and I hope that continues. But it's definitely been
so
quite
4
strange.
months out, like straight up. If I'm booking right now, it's late May. We're looking into the fall.
That's correct. We actually have a couple weekends. I should be more specific. In August and September, all of our private rooms are booked for all of the weekends. So we've got pretty far out dates. We've also got a few dates actually in 2025 that are already sold out.
Wow. So you've got to deal with, the demand and getting people in the door who want to be here, who maybe are visiting for the weekend. There's got to be ways. There's got to be a bat phone.
It's funny you say that. We actually ran into what we call our first customer service crisis in December, when all of a sudden we had one TikTok video really take off, and we ended up with almost 20,000 calls in that month. Wow. Needless to say, we weren't quite ready for it. Yeah. It was really difficult. We figured it out. We stepped up. We really got it done. But that's what we're trying to figure out, is how do we make that experience, which fortunately what we're also doing soon is we'll be launching a membership this year, which will give people an opportunity who are coming here consistently to get a little bit ahead of the curve.
Ah, that's smart. So, a little bit of a yearly membership, you get like that reservation, maybe some D2C products.
Exactly.
I like it, Amanda, like we were talking about. We can talk a little D2C. So you sell salts and seasonings and also steaks online. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's been a great transition for us because it's allowed us to keep that passion for craft and culinary, but then also recognize that the Golden Steer brand itself is beloved across the world. It's not for us just about trying to get into one market. It's about being able to be at all of these kitchens from across the U.S., which is really important. So we started shipping our e-commerce products in May of 2020, and pretty much every year we've been about doubling that business. We now have a separate warehouse, which also has its own storied legacy with the mob, which is hilarious. We find in all the spaces we occupy. And
where there's there's some secret corners with like maybe a little hidden.
I kid you not, there is a chain in the floor that used to be used so that when the armored cars came in with cash, they could actually secure the vehicles and then have them running throughout Vegas. There's some crazy stories with all the spaces we end up in.
Wow. I there's a whole nother podcast that we can do in a whole other episode about the hidden side. Where do you like to go out when you're not working in Vegas? You're a local, you grew up here, and I would love to get a sense of the restaurant and the chefs that excite you the most right now.
Yeah, so like I said early on, we do spend a lot of time at Mark Vetri's restaurant, Vetri at the Palms, because it's so phenomenal. We love Italian food. Ferraro's is another one that absolutely calls into that. It's another family business as well, first led by Gino, now Mimo Ferraro, amazing family that's got frankly, a phenomenal, if not unparalleled, wine program here in town. And then obviously James Tree, who is doing phenomenal work, always on the kind of arts district side, which is the new area that you're seeing great businesses, whether it's Main Street Provisions, 1228, which is a Wolfgang Puck offshoot concept, et cetera, all launched in that area, which is really fun. And then you've got Chinatown as well. So for us, it's about trying to cover as many restaurants as we can get to, whether that also includes the La Stregas or Golden Tiki for something a little fun, which we were just chatting about. There's a lot of amazing people that are coming in here with different culinary concepts, but we're still early in that development from a diversity standpoint.
Well, Gina from La Strega, we have her on these episodes as well, and she has a really cool story. So I'm glad you mentioned that. What she's building out there, kind of at the outskirts of town, to me as an outsider, feels quite special.
Yeah, between that and Harlow, it's really special to see how Summerlin has matured as an overall culinary destination, really elevating the types of concepts and the culinary sophistication that they're able to demonstrate.
Amanda, let me close by asking you a simple question. What is the key to having a great Las Vegas dining experience while visiting Las Vegas?
So the big piece, at least on the restaurant side, is we live and die by service. I will stand by the fact that I don't think you're ever going to find a restaurant with better service than you'll find here in Las Vegas. It's something different. The warmth, the passion, the character that we have, it's just different for us because this is our lifeblood. So that's what you're going to expect and what you should be excited to get into. If you're a tourist who shows up, my big encouragement is making sure, yes, you get a phenomenal restaurant at a strip property, but go off strip, go explore, test some other culinary pieces. There's a lot of resources out there and a lot of great chefs who deserve a chance to show you what they can wow you with.
That's amazing. Amanda Signorelli, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste. I'm going to get on that list to, I guess, have a standing res once a year here. This place is amazing.
Thank you. We're honored.
This has been All In on Las Vegas Food, presented by Las Vegas.
This is Taste is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things happening.